This review is not sponsored. I bought the device myself. Hope you enjoy the video. Hello guys, today I invite you to my impressions after 3 months of using the Xiaomi 17 Ultra. It's the first ultra photography model to hit the market this year. And there is something special about it since it's still with me. I didn't sell it after few weeks like I did with the Xiaomi 15 Ultra, and that already tells you something. So let's dive into the review. I feel like Xiaomi has been fighting an uphill battle for years. Even though their flagship hardware is often incredibly impressive, I still see comments like, it's great, but it's still just a Xiaomi. To be honest, I was in that camp too. I was skeptical. Even when I ordered this phone, I didn't expect to stay with me for long, because, well, it's just Xiaomi. But with the Xiaomi 17 Ultra, something changed. I've stuck with it much longer than I planned. This is my honest summary after a few months, once the new toy excitement fades and everyday life set in. I can safely say that this is one of the most beautiful phones of the year. I know the year isn't over yet, but still, that's my opinion. It's not just about the design itself, it's the details that, especially in Leica version, really impress. The texture sides, the rotating ring, redesigned volume buttons, and the subtle Leica logo. All of this, combined with the additional accessories, creates a truly premium feel. The device is well balanced and the camera module relatively small compared to the another ultra photography models is its advantage. An interesting point is the water resistance. On Xiaomi's Chinese website, it states that the device has an IP69 rating, but the global Xiaomi site lists it as only IP68. Another feature that really makes me happy about the Xiaomi 17 Ultra is the flat display. It's a 6.9-inch M10 LTPO AMOLED panel built with new HyperRGB technology, although its resolution is lower than that on Xiaomi 15 Ultra. It's exactly the same screen used in the Xiaomi 17 Pro Max. Sure, on paper, the lower resolution stands out the most, but in everyday use, the sharpness is more than enough. What often goes unnoticed, however, is another important aspect of the specs. The panel is 12-bit, which allows it to display over 68 billion colors. In practice, this translates to very accurate color reproduction. The image looks more realistic and natural. Even in vivid mode, the colors aren't overly saturated like on, for example, Galaxy S23 Ultra, so people who prefer punchy, highly saturated tones might feel a bit disappointing. Another big advantage is the smoother tonal transitions. The producer claims a peak brightness of 3500 nits. Overall, it's hard for me to complain about the screen, although it would be good to compare this model with the upcoming Ultra phones. Another advantage is the PWM dimming frequency of 2160 Hz, which is worth noting for everyone sensitive to flicker. The phone can be unlocked using 2D face recognition as well as an ultrasonic fingerprint scanner. The fingerprint reader is at a convenient height and works very quickly. When it comes to the performance of the Xiaomi 17 Ultra, there is hardly anything to complain about. My version comes with 16GB of RAM and 512GB of storage and has the latest Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5. The smartphone runs on HyperOS 3, and honestly, this is one of the best versions of Xiaomi software I've used so far. There are plenty of personalization options, and the animations are much more refined than before, although still not perfect. Sometimes when unlocking the phone, the fingerprint scanner animation can briefly shutter. I've tried the different animation options, but the issue occasionally comes back. It doesn't happen often, but when it does, the phone can freeze for about 2 seconds. Overall, the HyperOS interface works quite well, but in my opinion, it still doesn't quite match the level of, for example, ColorOS, which remains one of my favorite Android skins. It's also worth noting that my version of the phone comes from the Chinese distribution, which comes with some limitations. There is no support for eSIM, Android Auto doesn't work, but maybe the situation will improve with future updates, and some AI features are closely related to the Chinese assistant. Beyond that, the phone requires a few adjustments to make it more like global version. I talk more about this in my video about HyperOS and how to set it up for global users. But the good news is the Xiaomi 17 Ultra is no longer limited to China. In terms of vibrations, the phone performs really well. There are plenty of customization options. You can adjust both the strength and the character of the haptics. You have crisp, pop and bass modes. The vibrations are noticeable and quite pleasant, but in my opinion, brands like Oppo or Google still do it slightly better. As for temperatures, it's not hot in Malta right now, around 23 degrees in the sun, so I haven't tested it in extreme conditions yet. But synthetic tests like the 3D Mark Extreme stress test, as well as recording at the warm, steamy pool, show that the Xiaomi 17 Ultra, like its predecessor, can reach higher temperatures, even around 50 degrees. Even so, I've never seen an overheating warning under these conditions, and the phone cools down very quickly once the load ends. Of course, in less extreme situations, for example, taking photos in the sun at around 23 degrees, the phone can still heat up above 40 degrees. Perhaps when compared to the new Ultra, it will be warmer in full sunlight, and we will see how it behaves at the even higher temperatures. But for everyday use, there is nothing to complain about so far. As for extras, the phone includes an IR blaster for controlling home devices, which I use a lot, and in my version, so-called camera ring. This ring allows precise adjustment of zoom or another functions. At first, it felt like a fun addition, but it quickly became a bit annoying because I sometimes additionally move the ring and, for example, take a crop with the main lens. It's definitely not an essential feature for me, and over time, I would even call it unnecessary. In terms of producer support, I haven't seen any official information about Android updates yet, but we have information about security patches, and there will be 6 years of support. As for the phone's range, I generally can't complain. The only issue appeared in my so-called range dead spot. There were occasional problems sending voice messages on Telegram or streaming music from Tidal. But to be clear, there is a location where all phones from European distributions struggle. Only Chinese versions handle it better. On the other hand, call quality is excellent. The sound is clear, crisp, and has a wide tonal range. Surprisingly, I even get VoLTE on my multi-SIM card, which isn't always a given. Over time, I also really like the speakers on the Xiaomi 17 Ultra. They don't sound flat, and the subtle bass is noticeable. Additionally, they support Dolby Atmos. I'm curious to see how they will compare to the Samsung Galaxy S26 Ultra, which I've of course already ordered. As for Bluetooth codecs, the phone supports LDAC, LHDC, aptX, aptX HD, aptX Adaptive, and aptX Lossless. And now moving on to the camera. In order not to prolong this video too much, the specification will appear on the screen in front of you. Right from the start, I will say this. After the Xiaomi 11 Ultra, which I remember very fondly, the next Xiaomi I used was 15 Ultra. I skipped model like 14 Ultra due to the issues with the lens fogging. That said, I can confidently say one thing. Over time, I've come to the conclusion that the camera on the Xiaomi 17 Ultra is truly solid and probably the best of all the Xiaomi phones I've used so far. The main lens is extremely versatile. The producers saved the 1-inch sensor and additionally implemented the low-fig technology, which significantly improves highlight control. The main camera is very predictable, and that's something that convinces me more and more every day. Over time, I found that authentic mode has become my default setting when shooting in auto mode, especially on sunny days. On cloudy days or in the evening, I sometimes switch to vibrant, which brightens the photo slightly, but that's not a rule. I tend to choose authentic more often because it produces more natural-looking images. This mode reminds me of Oppo's master mode. It reduces sharpening, giving photos a softer and more organic feel. But the real value for me are the additional M3 and M9 styles available in the Leica version. I recorded a separate video about them, where I showed more photos taken with these styles and explained how they work. Both have their strength, but M9 is my go-to choice. The M3 style focuses on natural tonal transitions and strong contrast with deep, rich blacks, while a subtle grain adds a gentle texture. M9, on the other hand, has a very distinctive character. Colors are highly saturated and the blacks are deep and contrasty. These styles shouldn't be judged only from the technical perspective. Technically, they aren't perfect, but that's exactly the point. Photography isn't just about technical precision, it's about capturing emotions, atmosphere, and the moments itself. And in these modes, you can almost feel those emotions. Additionally, if someone is looking for better control over their shots, they can switch to the RAW mode. It's worth noting, however, that in this mode you can't take photos at the full 50 megapixel resolution. I also think it's worth mentioning Xiaomi's gallery app itself. For me, it's excellent. The editing possibilities are impressive and in many respects rival those of advanced 30-part apps. The ultra-wide camera is the same module we know from the Xiaomi 15 Ultra, and there is nothing special about it. Much like most ultra-wide lenses in smartphones, perhaps with the exception of the Vivo X200 Ultra. Of course, let's wait for the upcoming photography focuses ultra models and see how this lens compares to the competition, although I'm not expecting anything groundbreaking here. Personally, I don't use an ultra-wide-angle lens very often, so this isn't a serious drawback for me, but I still feel a certain sense of disappointment. And now let's move on to the lens I use most often, the telephoto lens. From time to time, I hear people ask, what's the point of a variable focal length anyway? But for me, it's a huge added value. The ability to adjust the zoom smoothly provides great flexibility and makes shooting much more comfortable. In addition, I think the Samsung HPE sensor used in the Xiaomi 17 Ultra is very good in terms of image quality. Over time, I can say it's a worthy successor of the HP9 and in my opinion, a better unit than the HPB, which at least in the Vivo X300 Pro had a tendency to over-sharpen images. Of course, the minimum focusing distance could be better. It would be ideal if it were around 16 cm. Unfortunately, it is 25-30 cm. However, thanks to the very good 8.6x zoom, I'm able to live with it. I'm aware that I won't get macro shots as spectacular as those from Vivo models. It hurts a little because it feels like wasted potential. When it comes to zoom, the maximum zoom is up to 120x. Up to 10x, photos look very good. While above 20x, AI zoom starts to kick in. You can choose between three options: off, on and automatic. The results can be surprising, sometimes in a positive way, but not always. A lot depends on the scene and the selected settings. With AI zoom enabled, however, the image can look noticeably more processed and less natural. When it comes to portrait photos, I'm really satisfied. Of course, if someone wants to most natural effect, it's worth turning off the face beautification, which is enabled by default. The Xiaomi 17 Ultra handles background separations very well, which makes me even more curious to see how it compares with the new Ultra model from Oppo, which for me was the portrait king of 2025. The only drawback I've noticed is the occasional inaccurate skin tones, but this tends to happen under specific conditions like strong direct lighting. I use the front camera very often, and over time I can say it's really solid. The colors are natural and faces aren't overly smoothed. Of course, as long as the default beautification is turned off. A greater loss of detail is of course visible in low light conditions. The portrait mode isn't perfect, but it performs very decently. A big plus is the presence of autofocus. And finally, night photography. For the first time in a long while, I'm actually enjoying taking night photos with the Xiaomi smartphone. Xiaomi has really done its homework, and thanks to Lofic technology, the phone handles highlights much better. But it's not just that. The colors, the detail, everything really comes together. I'm very curious to see how the 17 Ultra compares to the Vivo's new Ultra model, since Vivo phones have long been considered some of the best in low-light photography. I also don't have major complaints about action shots. The action mode performs very well both in daylight and in the darker scenes. The only conditions where the phone might struggle are evenings and weaker artificial lighting. In all other situations, it performs really good. Xiaomi offers very good video recording possibilities, including 8K at 30 fps. In 4K you can record up to 120 fps, and you can smoothly switch between the front and rear cameras even in 4K at 60 fps. For those who need more control over their shots, there is a Pro mode, including recording in log mode. Additionally, you can use a dedicated Xiaomi LUT. I will leave a link to this LUT in the video description. As for image quality, fortunately, the video isn't overly sharpened, as was the case with the Vivo X300 Pro. The dynamic range is very good and the details and colors are well represented. The ultra-wide lens performs the weakest, which is especially noticeable at night. I also expected better highlight control on the main lens, especially during sunset. I feel that the Lofic technology could be a bit more effective in these conditions. In addition, stabilization on the main lens, especially at night, could be better. However, in the telephoto lens, to my surprise, it works really well. "4K 60 fps, good lighting conditions. Now there is a main lens, ultra wide. We back to 1x. Now telephoto lens. I'm moving, of course, now, so I can say that the stabilization is pretty good. The maximum zoom is 30x, like now. Okay, we back to 1x, and of course running. 4K 60 FPS, good lighting conditions. It's a nice weather today, but there is not a lot of sun. But I try to show you towards sun is of course behind the clouds. I think something here, and of course running. 4K 60 FPS, worse lighting conditions, because as you can see or not, the sky is orange, so it means the sun will set soon. Of course, it's not perfect behind me, but there's a lot of phones that have problem with that kind of conditions. And now running. Front-facing camera, video at night, auto FPS turning off, so you can see how it looks like. Maybe I turn so you can see the difference. One of the things that has noticeably improved for me over time is the battery. The Chinese version has the 6800 mAh battery, while the global version comes with 6000 mAh. Currently, I can say that if I'm not using the camera intensively, I still have around 45% battery left by the end of the day. Recently, I was out from 7 AM to 2 PM, constantly on mobile data, heavily social media use, and about 2 hours on Google Maps. When I got home, I still had 45% left. I think that's a very good result. Of course, I'm talking about the Chinese version. It's worth noting, however, that during heavy camera use, the battery can drain faster, especially when using the Leica M3 and M9 styles and frequently processing photos in the gallery. One thing I know for sure, if the battery on 15 Ultra used to frustrate you, the 17 Ultra is definitely better. You can really feel the difference. But this isn't a battery monster. For comparison, the Oppo Find X9 Pro clearly lasted longer on a single charge in my usage. The Chinese version comes with a charger. The phone supports 90-watt wired and 50-watt wireless charging. So to sum up, I think the Xiaomi 17 Ultra will definitely be one of my favorite phones of 2026. I can hardly believe I'm saying this, but this smartphone really managed to pleasantly surprise, from its design, speakers, and for example, camera. It's by far the best Xiaomi I've ever used. It's not a perfect phone, such devices don't exist, but in daily life it brings a lot of joy. Its strongest point is of course the camera. Photos from the main lens are natural looking, and the telephoto lens, despite its limitations with minimum focusing distance, is one of the best on the market. At the moment, it's definitely one of the best photography-focused smartphones, but it's worth mentioning one more thing, the prices. Overall, I'm not surprised by the price of the base Xiaomi 17 Ultra. Prices start at around 1,500 euro, which is pretty much what I expected. However, the price of the Leica version in the European market is absolutely huge. 2,000 euro is really a lot. I know it's 1 terabyte. I know they include a gift, but still, it's a very high price. I remember when the Chinese distribution prices were announced, and even then some people said, wow, 1,250 euro for the Leica version. So now, looking at the European price for the Xiaomi 17 Ultra, you could say that the Chinese version is really attractive. I will be honest, I wouldn't buy the global Leica version at this price, but at the Chinese price is definitely worth considering. So thank you all so much for watching this video. Of course, I encourage you to subscribe to the channel. Take care, and I will see you next time. Bye.